President Trump's decision on Tuesday to fire the FBI director, James B. Comey, immediately fueled calls for an independent investigator or commission to look into Russia's efforts to disrupt the election and any connections between Mr. Trump's associates and the Russian government. Calls to appoint an independent prosecutor have simmered for months, but until now, they had been voiced almost entirely by Democrats. Mr. Comey's insistence that he was pressing ahead with the Russia investigation, and would go wherever the facts took him, had deflected those calls, especially because he was in such open defiance of a president who said the charges were fake. Mr. Comey's firing upended the politics of the investigation, and even Republicans were joining the call for independent inquiries. Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona, who is among the most hawkish members of Congress on Russia, said that he was disappointed in the president's decision and that it bolstered the case for a special congressional committee to investigate Russia's interference in the 2016 election. He got support from the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard M. Burr of North Carolina, a Republican leading what appears to be the most active congressional investigation on Russia. "I am troubled by the timing and reasoning of Jim Comey's termination," Mr. Burr said in a statement. "It further confuses an already difficult investigation by our committee," he said, adding that Mr. Comey had been more forthcoming with information than any of his predecessors. The Democratic vice chairman of the Senate panel, Mark Warner of Virginia, said in a brief interview that Mr. Comey's firing means the Senate intelligence investigation has to redouble its efforts, has to speed up its timeline, because we've got real questions about the rule of law. Even before Mr. Comey was fired, the committee was pressing forward with its investigation. Late last month, it asked a number of high-profile Trump campaign associates to hand over emails and other records of dealings with Russians. Mr. Warner said the committee planned to announce on Wednesday who had complied and who had not. Officials familiar with the investigation say the committee is prepared to issue subpoenas to get the records. Mr. Warner would not say when, or if, those might come. Earlier in the evening, he told CNN the committee had sent the Treasury Department a request for financial records of Mr. Trump and a number of associates. The Justice Department insisted the dismissal had nothing to do with the Russia investigation. Rather, it said, it was a response to how Mr. Comey handled the investigation of Hillary Clinton, and his decision to declare last summer that there was no reason to prosecute her for using a private email server. Yet Mr. Trump's letter to Mr. Comey made a oblique reference to the Russia investigation that has consumed the early months of his presidency. "While I greatly appreciate you informing me, on 3 separate occasions, that I am not under investigation, I nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you are not able to effectively lead the Bureau," Mr. Trump wrote. "The letter doesn't pass any legitimate smell test," Mr. Warner said. For weeks, Mr. Trump has turned to his Twitter account to denounce the investigations as a waste of taxpayer money, including in the hours before Mr. Comey testified to Congress last week. His Twitter posts appeared to be direct challenges to an open FBI investigation, a subject presidents have traditionally tried to avoid commenting on publicly. Whether Mr. Trump was seeking to affect the Russia investigation will now become a subject of argument and a new partisan battle. Some in the White House feared that Mr. Comey's inquiry, first publicly acknowledged nearly 2 months ago, could harm the president even if no charges were brought. At the core of the concern about Mr. Trump's motive for firing Mr. Comey is whether the White House is trying to delay or derail the FBI's investigation into Mr. Trump's associates. Among the former advisors to the president now under investigation are his campaign chairman Paul Manafort and Roger Stone, a longtime confidant. Mr. Stone predicted last year that there would be major, embarrassing revelations about Democratic officials, which proved prescient when WikiLeaks published emails from John D. Podesta, Mrs. Clinton's campaign chairman. The emails had been stolen by Russian hackers months earlier. Appearing before Congress in March, Mr. Comey described the FBI inquiry as a counterintelligence investigation, indicating that one question was whether Russia's government had tried to recruit Mr. Trump's associates. He said explicitly that one focus was possible collusion between Trump associates and the Russian officials behind interference in the election. Investigations of this type can go on for years, and some Republicans were increasingly concerned that it was creating a cloud over the president and the party that they could not dispel. Democrats said they had little doubt of what had motivated Mr. Trump to fire his FBI director. Representative Adam B. Schiff of California, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, said the firing raises profound questions about whether the White House is brazenly interfering in a criminal matter. When Mr. Trump was preparing for the presidency after his election, there was no immediate sign that he would seek to oust Mr. Comey. The FBI director came to brief him at Trump Tower with other intelligence officials, carrying a detailed intelligence report, ordered by President Barack Obama, on Russia's actions and the intelligence supporting the conclusion that President Vladimir Putin was behind them. Afterward, Mr. Trump said briefly in public that he was persuaded by the evidence. During that same session, Mr. Comey briefed Mr. Trump on a dossier compiled by a former British intelligence officer that alleged a broad conspiracy between Mr. Trump and Russian officials. None of those charges have been proven, but the briefing immediately associated Mr. Comey with an investigation Mr. Trump has dismissed as a politically motivated witch hunt. The firing also raised questions about the role of Attorney General Jeff Sessions, a former senator from Alabama and one of Mr. Trump's earliest supporters. Mr. Sessions recused himself from the Russia investigation in March, after it was revealed that he had provided inaccurate information to Congress about his meetings with the Russian ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak. On Tuesday, however, he wrote a letter to Mr. Trump endorsing a memorandum by his deputy, Rod Rosenstein, and making the case for Mr. Comey's immediate ouster. In that letter, Mr. Sessions did not describe his specific concerns but said, "A fresh start is needed at the leadership of the FBI,